Hello, this is Rob Brown here from Accounting Influencers, and this is the second in our series of panels we're doing for our Accounting Influencers podcast network, where we're interviewing some prominent and influential women leaders in accounting and fintech and talking about the topic of diversity and women in accounting generally. I have four terrific, stellar guests with me today, and they're going to introduce themselves in just a moment. But this is an interesting topic, and it's one that's gathered momentum over the last few years, particularly since pandemic times. And the joys of being live is that we've just lost one of our panelists. So we'll get Julia to introduce herself in just a moment. Ariana, let's start with you. Would you please let the audience know who you are and what it is that you do?
Sure, thank you so much for having me. My name is Ariana Barracuda. I'm the Managing Director of Majors Accounts, which is a firm based in Southeast London. We work mostly with the SME community nationally, providing accounting and business consulting services. We're a very forward-thinking digital firm. I myself am a member of ACCA and a panel member of the ACCA UK Practitioner Network panel and a forum member of the ACCA Global Forum.
So you're not just running a firm, you're out there talking about running a firm and all the other topics, Ariana. That's one of the reasons you're here. You have a voice.
Well, I think so. I hope so.
Excellent. Angela, lovely to have you with us. Please give us a little introduction.
Right, I'm Angela Leroy. I'm in Trinidad, West Indies, and Warm, Caribbean Island. I am the chairman of Aegis Business Solutions Limited, also the chairman of Eve Anderson Recruitment Limited and Caribbean Resourcing Solutions Limited. Those are two recruiting companies. My company is over 20 years. The others are about 51 and 25 years old. We offer really outsourcing services. So basically we do islands, companies all over, but we're head office in Trinidad. And I'm really glad to be here with these wonderful panel here that is with me. And again, let's hope we have a great meeting. Thank you.
Diversity of thought. We love that. Francesca, welcome. You and I are old friends. You've been on our podcast before, but it's lovely to have you talking here with us on a topic that I know is very close to your heart. So please, a little introduction from you.
Oh, it's good to be with you again, Rob, and hello to everybody on the panel too. A little bit jealous that Angela's sitting in somewhere an awful lot warmer than where I am today. So I'm Francesca Lagerberg. I'm the global CEO for Baker Tilly. That's an international top 10 accounting firm. And so my background is accounting all the way. I've worked in professional services most of my life, a short diversion into industry for a couple of years, but mainly in professional services. And so I'm a chartered accountant, chartered tax advisor. I'm a qualified barrister, and I'm a fully trained senior practitioner in coaching.
You've clearly got more hours in your day than the rest of us, Francesca, because you've got a lot done. We're just going to bring Julia Penny in right now. She's just coming back into the Zoom room. The joys of technology. This is the Zoom world that we're in. We're keeping it real. So here she is right now, hopefully. Or will we have to? Here she is. Welcome back, Julia. We've just done some introductions and everyone's just shared who they are. So we're catching up with you. Please say a little bit about you and what you do. And welcome back.
Apologies, the joys of internet and connection problems. It was all working fine until it wasn't. I'm currently president of ICA, which is the Institute of Accountants, and in my day job, so to speak, which is sort of on hold for this year, I'm an accountant who deals with the technical and training side of account audit, financial reporting, money laundering. So please don't ask me anything about tax. So that's me.
Got that. Thank you, Julia. We're struggling a little bit with your internet connection because you're freezing, but we'll work with it as best we can. Even if we lose you from the video and we go through the audio, at least we'll have your thoughts. So let's kick off by asking, what makes diversity such an important topic in these accounting times? Ariana, let's start with you on that one, because I know you're an advocate for women in accounting.
Yeah, I think women obviously give a lot in terms of diversity and skills to any workplace. A lot of them don't feel like they have the opportunity, or maybe they do, but they are too worried to kind of go ahead and go for a role because they think, oh, maybe I'm not good enough. I know that myself, kind of getting in the career, at every step I always thought, I'm not sure, you know, can I do this? Can I not? If I'd have just gone for it each time. I mean, I did go for it, but each time I was hesitant. But that's me pushing. I'm used to pushing myself a lot, but a lot of women don't push themselves, so they don't get the right opportunities to really showcase what they can do. But when given the opportunity, they can make a huge difference. I know within our firm, and a lot of other firms actually, they are worried about taking on women because there's the whole point of, oh, they might need to go on maternity leave, so at some point they're going to go anyway. We're going to need to find someone to replace them, and they've got kids that they need to look after. These are all concerns that a lot of firms have, but actually with us, we found that we allow women to make work fit around their lives. And we've done that with quite a few women. A lot of them, yeah, they've all had children. We've had one that's had 3 children whilst being with us, but she's been amazing. You know, we've given her the opportunity to make work around her life, and she's given us everything, the maximum, because she appreciates that. And just the level of commitment and the level of work that we get from her is absolutely amazing. And that's right through the board. So it's just making sure that, one, they're able to push themselves to go for it, and giving the opportunity, which not as many firms, I think, kind of see at what could happen.
Of course, that speaks more into the practical aspects of how we get women more involved in accounting. Francesca, you've been in this game a long time, may I say, and diversity seems to be a much more talked about topic now than in recent years.
It really is. I mean, obviously, I started very young, Rob. So
of course,
yeah, I wish
you're like me. You're very, very late 20s.
Very late 20s, maybe creeping into the 30s. I mean, unless you've been living under a rock, you'd know that diversity is such a hot topic, such an important factor, and it matters for all sorts of reasons. Well, I mean, why wouldn't you want to give everybody the best possible opportunities, regardless of gender, race, anything? Why wouldn't you want to do that? But there's some really interesting things about how businesses thrive when they're a little bit more diverse in their thinking and their approach. There's a lot that suggests it's not about causation necessarily, but is about correlation. Plenty of great research showing that firms that are more diverse make better decisions, are perhaps more aware of what's going on in the broader world. They resonate more with their clients. They resonate more with the people that they work with. But it's a massive talent attractor, particularly for our younger generation. They don't want to work in an organization that looks kind of a little bit homogenous, doesn't look as exciting as the world that they normally operate in. So I think from the perspective of does diversity matter? Absolutely, yes. The much more difficult piece is how to bring it alive. So it's not just a plan or an initiative or a project. It's about something real that's part of what we do.
Julie, you're president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, but you have an international remit with your organization as well. Is it fair to say accounting has been a traditionally male-dominated environment? Why are we talking about diversity now?
Yes, I mean, I think definitely when I started out, I did an accounting degree as well before I carried on with my training contract. And I didn't realize when I started how many more men there were than women in accountancy at that time. But increasingly, we're getting much more level with the junior people coming in. So lots of female accountants coming into the profession. But of course, we've still got a big lack of balance sort of later on with more senior roles. And I think some of it speaks to the points that Ariana was saying about flexibility and reluctance to have people in the roles. But I'd like to see that actually it's about people and not just women. Because, for instance, you know, parents, we don't question whether parents can hold a job down. We question, typically, dare I say, whether women can hold a job down when they have caring responsibilities. But why not flip it on its head and say, we all have responsibilities outside of the workplace, and it should be important for everybody to be able to fulfill, you know, work, if they're choosing to work, able to work, and private lives, you know, in a flexible way. And I think we're starting to make a little bit of inroads. Obviously, the fact at the moment is it is very much women who tend to get the raw end of the deal, and where some adjustments need to be made. because of how roles have developed, over many years. So I think little steps being made, but still a long way to go to make sure that we get the best out of everybody.
Well, we'll come up with some solutions to how we get the best out of everyone. Angela, we're talking about diversity and minorities here, women specifically. Is diversity an important topic where you are in the Caribbean?
Well, I think diversity is really an international issue. But for me, the way I would look at diversity is really when you look at the difference in terms of perspectives. They're very different perspectives is one of the things. And also they're very different shared experiences. And to me, that is what diversity brings. So that within the group of accountants or whatever it is you have, we are talking accountants here, it is good to have the benefit of that perspective and that shared experiences for individuals and for the business as well. I mean, I throw this part where, was being said, it was in my days, I'm a baby boomer, so of course it was only men. In fact, I was like maybe the second female. I was the first woman partner in Price Waterhouse. Okay, and what I found is that I perhaps just did what I had to do, and therefore I think now, if you look at it, there are more women in the accounting field than there are men. In fact, at universities, when you go and a man actually gets the degree, you really have to clap so loud because it's so many women. Where are the men? So, I think we may be looking at a trend where, the man can actually be now the species that disappears in the accounting field, because I think that is what is happening. So that's as much as I would say, because there's lots of questions maybe you'll want to ask.
Of course. There is research that says 53% of accountants in practice are women, 47% men, but women are chronically underrepresented in positions of leadership. So let's talk about your own careers, ladies, for the moment, because in many respects, you've risen to the top of your field. I'm not saying you can't go any higher and do different leadership roles, but you would be considered by people watching this video as having got to the top. And I wonder how much of a fight that has been, or how easy that's been for you. Francesca, let's start with you on that one. Just talk us briefly through any pivotal points in your career and your journey to the top.
Yes, I think there's a whole bunch of things that are real pivotal points in whether you stay and actually fight through to those senior roles and whether you don't. And I think a lot of people opt not to go through to senior roles because it is very difficult. It can be very difficult. And I'd like to hope that as we all progress forward, we're making it easier for the generation that comes behind. The couple of things I think that really stand out for me in terms of my own career, it is a bit like many people said, I kind of assumed that I couldn't really do some things. So I had to kind of change my mindset about the fact I didn't need to be good at absolutely everything to go after some of the roles. If I was good at some of those things and I could learn about others, that would be good enough. And I think there is a bit of a male-female piece around that. Women often want to be good at all of the things before they put themselves forward. So that was a big learning for me. Another big learning wasn't waiting to being asked. Don't sort of assume that someone's going to come round and tap you on the metaphorical shoulder and go, your time has come, well done. You have to make sure that you're creating your networks, talking to people, really trying to get some decent feedback. And it took me a while to realize that I had to go and seek that. It wasn't always going to happen. I needed to go and ask those questions. So another pivotal moment was actually realizing that sometimes your best sponsors are people who perhaps do fulfill that category of looking like another generation. And I was really lucky to have some great male sponsors and mentors who gave of their time and their experience. And you hear it these days called allyship, but really it's about having people who fight your corner, who go, actually, she's got potential, give her a chance. She might not look quite like the past, she might not look like the people you would normally go and put into these roles, but give her a go. I think she could do a really good job here. And I was lucky enough to have a few people who did that. And I'm a huge fan of getting that sponsorship from people who've made it, got to those roles. And perhaps the very last but hugely important part for me was having employment relationships where there was great flexibility around how I worked and the way that I worked. And I'm a huge fan of what these days we'd call hybrid working. In my days, it didn't have a name. It was kind of that weird thing that not many people did. So I've been lucky enough to work in a very flexible way for pretty much all my career, which means not always having to be in the office or coming in earlier, leaving earlier, coming in later, leaving later, having that flexibility, which I think the whole world has woken up to now as being a way of trying to find good mechanisms that help everybody work in a more effective way.
We perhaps might argue, Ariana, that it's easier now. Did you ever feel, you talked about your drive earlier, that you had to work twice as hard to get the same opportunities as men got, or am I being a little bit controversial there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to, from my experience anyway. I was always the type where I tended to keep quiet, keep my head down and work hard because I had a vision of where I needed to go. And in order to do that, I needed to fulfill certain steps and fulfill certain hours, because it was a mindset. I had a mindset of, if I don't work this much, I'm never going to move on to the next stage. Like, I have to fulfill my cup at each stage in order to move up. And as a result of that, it's not a case of where I would talk about, you know, I can do this and I've got this skill, or it was a case of, yeah, I can do it. I don't need to go around telling people about it. I just get on with it, keep my head down. So I think for me, the kind of change, I guess, within my career was when I started to network. And believe it or not, I didn't start networking till 2019. And I think that generally the accounting field is very much, oh, I don't want to speak to someone else because they're my competitor and they might, you know, take my ideas and so on. But after that, I started networking and started talking about what I could do. People would actually say, oh, wow, that's amazing. And you think, really? I thought that was just standard. I thought that's what everybody knew. I didn't think that I was doing anything special. And then meeting people, you create your own voice, your personality, opinions, which I never thought I should have. So really connecting with others in the field really opened my eyes to what I can actually do. And my vision or my goal of where I wanted to be changed so much. I thought I can do way more than I thought in my head. In my world, I had this like, oh, I'm going to get there and that's it. But actually, there's so much more that I can do. And that comes from speaking to people and connecting with other people within the field. And my role model was also a male, was actually, in fact, my dad, because he's very much kind of, you have to go and get this. There's no reason, no one can stop you. As long as you're well and healthy, there's no reason why you cannot go and do something. So he instilled that within kind of our life, as he was an army major, by the way, as well. So you can imagine what life was like growing up with him. But whatever I did, it was a case of, okay, you got, let's say I'd get 100% in a school exam. He'd be like, and it was out of 100 anyway. What have you done that's so special? So every step, he always pushed me for more. And I guess that's where I got it. But you need to have, I think, people around you that can help realize and push you along and open your eyes to what you can do. And I think from that point on, that's where I changed the way that I run the business, changed the business completely, turned it into a digital practice. And I've got so many more goals with the business now as a result of speaking to more people and seeing what's out there.
Of course. And Angela, the message is coming over very strongly here that we've got to do it by ourselves, but we can't do it alone. So you said you were the first female partner at your Big Four firm. How has your career gone, and have you had allies along the way?
Well, to tell you the truth, I think I always work as if the business was mine. That's my mentality. And I only discovered in 2008, I think, when I was getting ACC award. Apparently, they asked me a lot of questions, like when I got qualified. And I don't remember half of those things. And so I had to ask the partner, because I'd left Pricewaterhouse now. What did I? Yes. And I said, could you give me an idea, like, when did I get qualified? When did I do this? I mean, I don't remember it. She said, you know what? I want to send you your file. So I thought, okay, she's going to send me the file. But when I got the file, in those days, I never told you anything about, you know, like now we actually mentor people and we tell them what we think of them. I never got any of that. So when I got the file now, I'm learning for the first time. I'm a junior. So one of the seniors, no, he was a senior manager at the time, said, if we have any more juniors like this, we'll all be out of jobs. Then one of the partners said, the almost perfect auditor. Now, listen to me. This is in 2006. I'm learning about this, and I started as a trainee in the 70s, right? So like I'm learning for the first time. They were so scared to lose me. If I only knew that, I would have jammed them. That is some lighting. That sorry if you hear anything in the background. So they wanted to make me a manager, and they were worried about somebody who was 12 years old, so they made two of us a manager. Now, when they offered me partnership, they told me 6 months ahead, and I said, so soon, because I'm not looking at for it, because I'm thinking it is a man's world. I'm nowhere there in my mind is this whole thing about being a partner. So 6 months passed. I tell my husband, I'm not sure that, are you all hearing me? Because it is rain behind me outside. Are you hearing me? Okay. Yeah. So I said to my husband, it'd be more work. I don't need this. I could do something else. 6 months passed. They called me, Angela, we offered you partnership. You haven't told us what you wanted. So I run back to my husband and said, you sure you should take this? I mean, might be more work. No, blah, blah, blah. He said, don't be stupid, you should take it. So that's how I took it. So to tell you the truth, I have to tell you, I did not feel pressure. Coming up in my career, I did not feel pressure. But what I will say to you is this, I had great mentors. I had absolutely great mentors. And that is a key thing, I think, in my own career.
Thank you. And just stay close to your microphone, Angela, when you're speaking so that we can fully hear your voice. Just to finish off this particular thing, role models clearly are important. A lot of women I speak to saying, as I was coming through my career, I didn't see many women like me. I didn't see people like me. Minorities I speak to, there was nobody like me. And it's interesting that a couple of you at least have said, well, men were important in opening doors for me and ushering me into boardrooms and getting me into the right conversations and having faith in me as an individual that pushed me on. Any additions to that around your role models before we move on? Anybody?
I would like to share this. There was a partner which really got me angry. I'm a very substantive person. Those of you in auditing, you check everything 100%, you're sure it's all right. But he had the ability to flip a bloody page in the file and say, Angela, if only had walked through the system, you would not have had to do so much work. I would want to kill him because he was so, in the control side of it, compliance. Anyhow, knowing that I hated him, but when I say hated him, you know what I mean? He's just so different to me. I said to him when he was due to retire, we were moving offices. I said, where is David Hill sitting? I want to be right next to him, the office right after him. By this time now, I'm a partner. So I say to him, David, I know you're going to retire in the next 2 years. Before you leave, I want to know everything there is in your head before you leave. So every morning before I go into his office, says, what are your problems? Say, oh, so in half an hour, solve all my huge problems within an hour. So every day for 2 years, I went into his office. And then what was so nice, he's an introvert to the extreme, and I'm an extrovert. So one day he leaned out my desk in the office and says, Angela, I want to know what you think is the answer to so-and-so. So I looked at him. I said, what do you mean, my gut? He said, yes, what do you think? So I said, when I say it's 100, now I know he's an introvert, so he internalized it. I said, by the way, what is your answer? He says 50. I said, my gosh, I swear he's right. He says, no, Angela, the answer is midway between the two of us. Do you understand that learning? I mean, it's amazing. So sometimes he would even come into my office in the night and says, okay, Angela, I want to just tell you my thought process in this matter. And he would sit down and expound. This is why I say your mentors are amazing if you have them.
Sure. Thank you very much. Julia, your career's been plain sailing to the top, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, not quite. I would say that I would reflect a lot of those points that have been said. So I've had important men in my life that have sort of, promoted me when I wasn't expecting it because I was working hybrid, as Francesca has said, and thought, well, that would be, yeah, I'd have a job, but I wouldn't possibly get promoted. But actually, the boss, who was a man, didn't see any difference. He said, well, no, you're still, doing good work. You can still be promoted just because you're working part-time, just because you're working hybrid. So that's really important. Networking, absolutely really important. But I think, there have been challenges. I back off maternity leave with my first child, which was quite challenging to deal with, and probably had, quite an impact on how bolshy I became in terms of trying to, then carve something out that I thought would work for me and my family. And then I think I had, some really good moments with helpful mentors. And then as you get a little bit higher, I think again, I found, the pressure that, well, oh gosh, you're only getting that because you're a woman. Without well, you don't get that because you're a woman. Hang on a minute, you can't have all of the good things being, oh, well, it's just women getting chosen over men for things now. And so, I would say now there's been a lot of progress over the last, 30 years or whatever, but there's still quite a way to go at that top end, particularly. So I think it's getting better from the bottom up. Obviously, I'm not starting my career, so I can't really quite say if that's really the case, but it seems to be like that. Still some challenges though.
Yes. When I talk to women leaders in accounting, some of them speak of a gender blindness where I didn't really notice that there were more men than women. It wasn't really a thing that there were not enough women in accounting. But other women talk to me about a defeminization, that they've had to compromise who they are to a degree because they couldn't be bolshy like you, Julia. They couldn't be driven. They couldn't show ambition. It was something of a dirty word. So let's come to you first on this one, Angela. Being a woman in a man's world, were there any challenges or threats to what you wanted to be in your life?
Well, first of all, let me say, auditing, when I was brought up, you were always right. That was the amazing ridiculousness. You don't know one thing, but you were always right. I then went into accounting because they needed it. And let me tell you, I loved it because you know why? I was dealing for the client, right? So I would score points because you have to provide, you have to give this provision for bad debt, la, 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 la. It played havoc with my personality because I wasn't like that. Now, because it was so much a man's world in my days, I only dressed in pastel shades, light pink, light green, light blue. You'll never see me in a suit, never.
It's safe that way, isn't it? In pastel.
So just make sure you know I'm female, right? But I had some time to take a hard line. So when I became in charge of training of Pricewaterhouse, I think first thing I dispelled from all auditors, don't for 1 minute think you know more than the person sitting across the table. You don't. What you have is a broad perspective which you can bring, but you don't. And you see, we brought up with that sort of mentality, which is really the thing to me. You're so righteous, as you would I'm going to use in my days, right? So clearly, I would say there was the conscious effort for me to be female and not be a male. The other thing is, yes, there were challenges, and I will tell you, if you all can't tell, but I am all of 4 feet 7 inches. Think of me 50 pounds lighter, long straight hair with a ponytail, looking like a real schoolgirl. So I am doing this insurance company. It's the largest insurance company. And I could talk to execs, but I can't get above that. I can't get to the board. So what do? I walk straight into the partnership. I say, guys, there's a real important client, but I need a man to front, and I will do all the work because I look like a schoolgirl. So they don't think, even though I'm a partner, they don't think I have a brain. So I take one of the guys, and he's fronting. I'm doing all the research. And I did all the research to bring property into the statutory fund for the insurance company. And I'm fighting across the table with a lawyer who's telling me, Angela, you can't do that. I say, read clause 12 and tell me why I can't do it. So let me tell you, it is only then I got their respect. Because what I was able to do, they haven't had anybody do it. But I know I could do it. But the thing is, I had to get, to me, that was a strategy. I just need a man to front. But he obviously didn't know one thing that was going on. I was doing all the work. So yes, that what I will tell you is a good example. But I don't want to take up time because we have lots of other people to listen to.
Yeah. Francesca, nobody stood in your way, did they? There were no challenges or threats along the way for you?
No, totally smooth sailing. I remember vividly being in a meeting, one of my first sort of like big meetings with lots of more senior people in it, and I'd come in through. I was training at a big four firm, and the intake had been very gender balanced. You know, a lot of women, a lot of men at that stage coming in. I remember going to this first important meeting, and I was looking around the room, and I was going, "Oh my goodness, I'm pretty much the only woman here." Then I spotted two other women in the room. I thought, okay, that's kind of reassuring. That's quite good. And I realized one of them was the secretary taking the notes, and the other person was there to go and fetch the tea. And
Ouch.
I thought, oh, what is this about? This is really strange. And I think it was actually only when I saw it in such a visual and forceful way that it suddenly struck me that perhaps there was a little bit of work that we had to do. But I think from the perspective of where things have moved on, that's really encouraging to see, A, that we talk about it, that we make efforts to try and make a difference. And also, I think there's a much bigger recognition this day that that kind of world is just not acceptable. But also, why on earth would you want to go out and attract great, interesting, intelligent talent and then not help them go through that training process to reach their full potential? What is the point of trying to get equal numbers of people coming into our profession, but not giving them equal opportunities? So I'd like to hope that we're a lot smarter these days, but I think our incoming talent is a lot more, in a really positive way, much more demanding, because they would absolutely challenge that kind of setup. And they go, well, we don't look like our clients. We don't look like the things that we say on the page. We're not living up to our values. I think that's one of the massive positives of the new generation of accountants, is they find all of that behavior that perhaps we took a little bit as a, oh, that's all the way it works. They don't accept it and they challenge it, and so they should. So I think it's a great reverse mentoring moment. Now, what is it that, if you're in your 20s today, that you're seeing, and what is it that we can learn from our new generation of intake as well?
Yeah, Julia, we're so woke now, aren't we? We're so sensitive to this, and you can't be prejudiced in any way. You can't put people down. You've got to allow people to be authentic. Otherwise, you're a saboteur, or you're going against everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is absolutely vital that we allow people to be their authentic selves, to really bring the talents that they have, because we each have different talents. And if you start to sort of squash one element of, whatever it is, whether it's gender or another aspect of diversity, and say, oh, we don't want to see that, then all of a sudden your conversations around the board table, or whichever other table work-wise you're at, become one-sided. They don't see all of the positives and negatives. You get worse decisions. I've sat around lots of tables with mostly men, and I would have to say, in years gone by, there was probably that gender blindness, in the fact that I was so used to just seeing a sea of men. It didn't really register that that's what there was. But now we are living in a different world. As you say, the youngsters coming through just don't accept this as a valid excuse. And now I sit in a room, and if it's mostly men and it's just me as the only female, I'm sort of looking, thinking, hang on a minute. And then I'm listening to the conversation thinking, well, I'm not sure you're quite getting across all the nuances that I'm used to hearing when we have a more diverse set of people around the table. And that is much wider than just gender. So, the different race attitudes, people of different abilities, if they've got disabilities, all sorts of things need to come to the table for us to be the best we can. And with such shortages of talent, why would we not make the most of all of the talent that we have?
Ariana, I'm a father of 2 daughters, and we've got 2 female dogs as well in our house. So I'm very much on your side, as it were, but there must have been people growing up in your life that said, who do you think you are? What do you think you're doing? You can't do that. Was it like that?
Not growing up, although I guess, so I started in accountancy at the age of 13. So I had, after a few years, obviously I didn't speak to clients at the age of 13, but a few years down the line, I had learned enough to be able to start having meetings with clients, corresponding, requesting paperwork, request queries, things like that. And I had challenges twofold. One, oh, she's so young, she doesn't know anything. And oh, she's a woman as well, bless her.
A bit condescending.
Exactly. They're like, don't worry, I'm sure you will get very far later on in life. And, you'll reach your potential at some point. And that was just so frustrating. So during that time, I thought, okay, the only way to be taken seriously is I can't be happy and smiley anymore, because they take that as, oh, bless this woman, And even the way that I hold myself, the way that I dress, I changed it into a very serious kind of dress sense and persona. When I'd speak to them, I was like, right, we're getting down to business. What I need is X, Y, Z. And that's when they started to take me seriously. And they thought, okay, she means business. So they started to speak to me more and started to trust me. And looking back on it, I just think that wasn't me, but that was the only way I was going to be taken seriously. I had no choice but to act like that. And I went to an event that was full of kind of world leaders, business leaders, and they were all men. And I was the only woman at that point. I was still dressed in my suit and dark suit, not light colours either, because I don't want to stand out too much, so I could fit in and be like, yeah, I'm serious just like you guys as well. And when they first saw me, they were like, oh, what's a woman doing here? And just the way they spoke to me initially was so condescending, and I had to fight to show them, actually, I deserve my place here just as much as you have come here and have got your place. But initially, it was so condescending, and I'd say after a few hours, they're like, okay, no, she means business, we can't mess around. But having to always have your guard up throughout your career is not easy. And I think now that I've got confidence and I've learned how I want to be in business and how I want to portray myself, now I've gone back to being myself and not having to be so serious, but I'm able to switch as needed depending on the individual that I'm speaking to. But growing up or going through your career like that and having to try harder, because automatically when you walk into a room, you need to be careful, because some people are going to see you one way, some or another, and you want to make sure that you're taken seriously. You deserve to be there. So it wasn't plain sailing. And I think it's something where probably nowadays as well, women have to have the same kind of persona in a way. I think it's getting better, but you still need to show that serious side of yourself to initially be accepted.
Well, let's stay with you, Ariana, for this next question on leadership style. There's talk of a more compassionate, authentic, vulnerable, feminine style of leadership that seems to be popular, whereas the males would be perhaps a bit more testosterone driven and a little bit more power hungry in their approach. How would you describe your leadership style?
Yeah, I'm not very compassionate, I have to say, because I thought that would not make people take me seriously.
Okay, a sign of weakness, perhaps.
Exactly. So my way of thinking was, I've got to act like a man would if I'm going to be taken seriously. However, I think just because of my role, I've taken a very kind of transformational leadership role. That's probably because of what I have to do within the business, focusing on the future, focusing on change of people and so on. But it is a lot more conservative. I don't have, sometimes I don't know whether I've lost this now, because I've had to put on this persona from so early on. If someone comes to me for, they want to talk about their feelings, I may inside, I totally get it, but on the exterior, you'll just see a completely blank face. And my sister actually says to me, she's like, I'm never going to come to you for anything relating to emotions, because you just come up to me and you're like, right, you feel this way, X, Y, Z, this is what we're going to do, this is the plan of action, get on with it, no time to think about it, don't have that time to wallow and feel emotions. I'm like, put those to the side, get on with what you need to do, and you'll reach where you need to be. And she's like, but that's not what I need. I need you to kind of feel a little bit, or say, I understand how you feel, but I think that's just come from, this is how I've had to be.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe in the future that will change. I think is very difficult, and that's something that I'm now, it's a knock-on effect, having an issue.
Julia, what's your leadership style like?
Well, I try to be open and transparent. And I try to promote that we should all be kind to each other, and kind in the broadest of senses, because some of this gender issues, for want of a better word, that we're talking about, really just come from a lack of respect for the individual, because it shouldn't matter what you are, male, female, other, etc. It shouldn't matter. People should always be respectful, shouldn't just assume that you can't do your job, as Ariana was saying. And therefore, to me, we have to say, okay, well, let's all be like this. Let's all be kind to each other. However, the reality is we don't get that. And then you need to be firm. And then you need to say, no, this is not what is permitted. And you call people out. So you do need that strong persona. I think you do need to say, no, this is not behavior that is acceptable. And we need not to fall into traps of getting so used to something that we don't even see that it's happening. So we need to be aware. And that's, I think, where that, woke culture that you talked about, there is much more of an awareness of these things going on that are offensive to people, which belittle people, which cause their careers not to be able to progress, whatever it is. And if we call them out often enough and soon enough, when it's just a small issue, we will end up with much better workplaces, hopefully much happier people, because we'll all be being nicer to each other. So open, honest, but clear as to what the expectations are of everybody to contribute to a world which is more effective, but also happier for everybody to be in.
Got that. It sounds like the recipe for general leadership, never mind whether you're a man or a woman, it's just respecting people. Angela, are you a let's get it done masculine style of leader, or a more vulnerable feminine leader, or is that too categorized?
No, I think, let me just give you a little bit of background. When Price Waterhouse, I was there, we were doing, the first time I did Myers-Briggs, they were trying to do a team building exercise. So we all had good judgment. We were equally spread between introverts and extroverts. And I was the only one that was perceptive and intuitive. So I said, shit, I've been in the wrong profession all my life. So I go up to Dr. Pat Battle, she was from New York. I said, Pat, how come I'm the only one like this? Have I been in the wrong profession all these years? I really thought so. Huh? She says, no, Angela, what it is, they need more of you. If I now to look at the partners that have left Price Waterhouse, I withdrew from Price Waterhouse. I withdrew from the partnership. Because I heard people talking about accounting and auditing, how you could do both of them. And I said, well, but we've been with that all the time, but there's a time we're not going to be able to do it. So I just had a partners meeting. I said, guys, why don't I withdraw from this partnership and you continue to do what you should do, which is auditing, and I'll do the other things. So my thing here is I am very empathic. I'm not going to lie to you, but I do believe in being authentic and genuine.
Great.
What you see is what you get. Now, my company is like a family company. And if you come into Trinidad, people say we are #1 in terms of culture, even though we are who we are. Because I know what's going on with my staff. I know somebody is having problems in their marriage, this, they did. I know. And that is because they feel very comfortable to come and talk to me about it. And I would listen. So you have to learn to be empathic, but at the same time, you have to learn to have detachment so that you can listen, decide what needs to be done, but be there for them, because sometimes all they need is a listening ear. So that's it for me. I'm not going to say anymore. I think that because I don't want to check other people.
Francesca, a listening ear sounds very maternal in its approach and perhaps not what men might think of in leadership. But what is your style?
Well, actually, a lot of what's been said really resonates with me in terms of that flex, because I think if you're going to be leading, you're not always going to be following a single style. Authenticity, I'm a big fan of that. I am what I am for all my faults and all my things I'm better at. But I think there's an ability to flex to suit the occasion, which I think several people have talked about. I always remember meeting someone who did leadership training with horses. It was called equine leadership, and it was an extraordinary program. And horses obviously very big, they're very powerful. They don't want to do something, they really don't do it. She had 3 leadership styles that she was articulating, and it really resonated for me. Is sometimes you have to lead from the front, and sometimes in very difficult circumstances, you have to take the stance, you have to move forward, you have to make sure things are being driven. Sometimes you lead from behind, because you actually let the people are doing what they're great at. You're there, you're supportive, you're around. It's the empathy point you're talking to, Angela. It's about you're there, you're the safety net, if you like, but you're not actually you're not command and control, and you're doing something that is sort of the back end of the horse element. But a lot of the time you're just running alongside each other. And that's the coaching mentality, which is the leadership style that I feel most comfortable with, because you're not going to have all the answers. No one does. But listen carefully, take on, learn all the time, and be there to be asking great questions, being curious about what's going on, and then using that coaching mentality to help get the best out of your people. We're very, very lucky. We're working in a profession that attracts incredibly bright individuals. And therefore, we've got a large skill set that we can pull on. So I like that flexibility of style. I think at times you need to be at the front, sometimes you need at the back, but most of the time you need to be right there alongside.
Yeah, that's great. We're going to, as we bring things to a close, just look at some very practical solutions, best practice, what really works. So a quick fire around this one. Any top tips for culture? So Julie, I'll start with you on this one. For leaders of all backgrounds in setting a culture that embraces a more diverse workforce and greater inclusiveness, what would you say quickly?
I think culture is really complicated. You have to probably do it alongside, as Francesca would say, because you've got to bring people with you. But you might have to also do some of those leadership moments when you say, okay, look, time has moved on. This is how we want our culture to be. Surveys to try and understand where you are now and where you need to move to build a culture which is genuinely inclusive, which really takes everybody on the journey for success, I think would be my sort of one tip there.
Fantastic. Angela, what would you say about culture very quickly, things that really work in setting an inclusive culture?
Well, I think part of it really boils down to recruitment and retention strategies, right? At the end of the day, as a leader in my business, it's important that I really work with my HR team and the hiring managers so that you retain the best. Obviously, I say to people, hard to come in, but easy to go. That's how I look at it. And a big part of it is there's so many different tests you do now, depending on what you're looking for, that you could narrow down. But I do think it really is important that you really work with your HR team, depending on what it is you're looking for. It has to be very clear. What are the traits you're looking for in people? I think, as I say to people, technical skills, you could buy that. That's so easy, it's ain't funny. But you see, these soft skills, that is the hard skills. That I can't buy. So I spend a lot of money training my people in soft skills, because that is what gets you to the top, not the hard skills, which is the technical side. The one thing I just want to say, I think to Irona, just if I can have a point, this is a line I give my staff. If you are not networking, you are not working. But let me change that word networking so you understand what it is. If you are not building relationships, you are not working. That is what networking is. It's not meeting 10 million people. It's building those relationships is what gets you. So with that.
Fantastic. I'm just reaching for Exhibit A, my book, Build Your Reputation. And in it, I say that your network is who you know, and your reputation is who knows you. And you build your reputation by building your network. So that really, really resonates. So thank you for that. And culture, to finish, we have, who am I up to? I'm looking at my list right here. I apologize. Francesca, if we come to you on culture, finish with some words of advice on what works with culture. Thank you.
I'm delighted to. I think probably one of the big ones that we've perhaps not covered, but is sitting there, is consistency. Diversity isn't about a program or initiative. It's about everyday cultural change. Are you consistent day in, day out? Are you actually living the things that you talk about? Are you doing the things that you talk about? And if you say this is really hard, it is. It's really difficult, and that means you have to do it every day and can't give up on it and keep pushing through. Because if we don't make a change, if we don't make this part of how businesses work, we've let the next generation down. So it's incumbent on everybody, male, female, whatever whatever group we fall into, to make sure that some of the conversations that we're telling about our early start in our careers are not the start that people in our profession have, and they see a very different world, a better world. So be consistent. Don't just talk about it, do it.
Thank you for that. And final question, I'm going to ask you for closing remarks to address these to the females listening. And I suppose, to be politically correct, I could say females and the males and everything in between, with all the genders that we've got these days. Our podcast has thousands of listeners in 150 countries, but we don't know how many of them are female and how many are male. We suppose they're representative of the accounting and fintech profession generally. But Julia, I'm going to start with this one to wrap things up for us. Closing remarks, addressing the females. You've walked the path, you've been down the road, you've been on a journey, you've arrived, many of them might think. So a couple of career or life tips for women in accounting who want to become leaders, get promoted, reach the top, or just get more recognized and accepted. What would you say to them?
It's been mentioned already, and networking. It is all about people and understanding people, them understanding you, you understanding and learning from other people is just key to the whole thing. And so I would say that's tip number one. Tip number two, be forgiving of yourself, of everybody else, because we all make mistakes and we can all learn from our mistakes. And that is tip number three, learn, constantly learn. Because if you stop thinking that you can learn, or you stop learning, then you are on a slippery slope to nowhere. Network, be forgiving, and learn. Thank you.
Yes, you just reminded me of a quote by Eric Hoffer that said, to learn something, you can't be too arrogant to think that you can't learn, and you also can't be too negative in thinking that there's nothing out there that can't enhance your course. So I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that idea of constantly staying on top of things, building your business awareness and acumen so that you can speak strategically about a lot of things rather than tactically, that's definitely going to help. Angela, what are your closing thoughts to the women in accounting to help them do better in their roles?
Well, I'm going to agree with Julia. Networking is absolutely key, right? Because in any business, it is who know you or who know of you. Because a lot of business come to me that I don't know the people, but it's people who know me, tell them about me, right? And I knock wood, not a day passes that I don't get new work. So I'm telling you, it's the network. The other thing I think in whatever accounting field it is, get fully qualified in what it is, or at least you have the technical expertise, and learn new things. I mean, I'll be honest, I just did a business coaching course, and coaching, and then it's business coaching and business consulting. Business consulting is easy because that's what I do. But coaching is about not giving the answers, it's pulling the questions. So it's a different skill altogether. To me, you never stop learning. You just never stop learning. I've gone on doing one on intuition because, well, I go with my intuition, but I thought, well, let me learn more about it. So it's all about having open, and particularly being a baby boomer, and I have to deal with millennials like Z, X, Y, and Z. I intend to understand where their brain is. I have no intention of a baby boomer mind. So that means I keep learning.
Francesca, you mentioned earlier the coaching qualification you have. You must see that as a key part. What would be your closing remarks to our female listeners to help them in their roles?
Oh, there we go. I'm muting myself. Well, there's so much there that you've already had some great examples of. In addition to learning, I'd be curious, stay curious, ask questions, ask about things that you're not sure about. So that gives you a better understanding of the things that aren't really clear, but that drives a learning mentality. I'm a huge fan of coaching as a way to manage yourself personally, but as a way to work with the teams that you begin to get some ability to work with. So give yourself an ability to deal with teams and work with people. That sort of speaks to the relationship point that Julia mentioned so well. And I suppose last but not least, kind of believe in yourself. You didn't get where you are today without having some skill set, and to have a belief that actually even if you don't manage to succeed at everything you want to do, failure is just about another lesson. It's not really failure, it's about learning. So don't be scared to give something a go, even if it doesn't work out, because if it doesn't work out the first time, it might the second, it will teach you something. So don't be frightened about failing, be brave. And there are plenty of people who want you to succeed. And if you can latch into that, you'll realize there is a support network waiting for you there.
I love that. And I saw a great quote today that says, don't end your life with lots of I wish I had's, end your life with a lot of I'm glad I did's. And that speaks to being courageous. So that's very good. Ariana, closing remarks from you. I haven't asked you about this. I've been a little bit personal, but with your name, I would suggest that you are a minority in terms of your background, but also you're a female in accounting as well. So talk to us about what the women and minority people can do to maybe overcome things that they're fighting against to get to where they want to be.
Personally, I don't think being a minority is a disadvantage just because of my mindset. I think following on from what you were just saying, with being courageous, with anything, I speak up. The worst, I've always had this, the worst that can say to you is no. But what if they say yes? What if you do go ahead and achieve what you want to do? And it could be something that you never dreamed of. I dreamed of going to Oxford University, right? That was my dream as a child. I never thought I would. It's one of those where you just think, that would be cool, but it's never really going to happen. And you know what? One year I applied, I thought, worst they can say is no. If they say no, oh well. But they said yes, and at that point I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, So, but life is like that I'd say in every aspect. So be courageous, speak up, and just see. And no question, I would say, is a stupid question. Whatever your question is, just say it, speak up, and you will find the right answer, or you will find, actually, I already knew that, so that was fine. And also, like everybody else has said, build relationships. There is networking, but go a bit further. Build those relationships in all areas of life. And I think that makes a huge difference. And that's what's accelerated my career. These two, I'd say, mindsets and what I do in my life have really changed where I was to where I am now.
Well, thank you so much to all of you. I'm reminded of the saying that you've got to do it by yourself, but you can't do it alone. And it speaks to courage. It speaks to being curious. It speaks to all of the things you've said. And you are the mentors and coaches now of the generations coming up after you to help women blaze a trail, but just earn their rightful place in leadership roles in accounting. So I'd like to thank you all so much for your candor and your passion and your insights in contributing to this wonderful panel today. And hopefully we're given some inspiration and some practical tips to create a world in which diversity and inclusion are just non-topics. And we're all gender blind. And it is about how good we are at our job rather than our name or where we came from. So thank you all so much for taking part. And we'll see you on another panel, hopefully in the future. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
Bye,
very much. Thank you. Lovely to chat to you all.
Bye.